Hello students, in this lecture we are going to cover the topic that is compilation process. This is the last topic of your first chapter, that is problem solving aspects. Okay. Now what is this compilation process is? This process actually does the basic translation mechanisms and error detection. Okay, as you know, the computer only understand the machine language, which is in the binary format. The instructions are also in a binary format that are understood by the computer hardware. So to understand the computer, the instructions which we are given, which is other than machine language, that instructions we have to convert into machine language, and for that we need some special softwares. That special softwares do the translation of the program which we are written in a high level language into the machine level language, and that softwares are compilers and interpreters. Some languages uses the compiler while some uses the interpreter. Okay, basically some high level languages uses compilers and some uses an interpreters. Okay, look at this diagram. Here the source code is given to compiler or interpreter, and after compilation process it generates the object code. So the program which are written in a high level languages are called as a source code, and that source code are provided to the compiler or interpreter, and they convert it into the machine code, which we also called as object code. Okay, now this object code can be executed by the computer hardware. Although they both, means interpreter and compiler, does or perform the same task, but they work in a different ways. Okay, how that? Now we see compiler. Compiler actually translates the whole program or whole source code instruction by instruction and gives us the object code for the whole program, and this object code is later get executed. Hence a compiler generates another file which contains the machine code, or we call it as a object code, and that it can be executed later. The execution speed of compiler is faster. Okay, especially when if your program contains the loops. The compiler is not involved in the execution of the program. There is more memory requirement since the object file is created by the compiler, and a list of errors is generated after the entire program is checked by the compiler. The examples of compiler are or used by the languages is like Pascal and C. They uses the compiler for compilation process. The second software is an interpreter. So interpreter takes one instruction at a time, then convert that instruction and execute it. So what is the main difference is, interpreter compiles a single instruction at a time, convert it into the object code and also execute it. Okay, hence there is no intermediate code, so no code is generated, but this means that the program has to be converted every time before the executions, because every instruction is going to be executed separately. So because of that, it is slower than the compiler. Now, an interpreter also executes the instruction, so it takes the time. So the memory requirement is less for the interpreter as compared to compiler. The errors are displayed for every instruction which is interrupted. Therefore, debugging becomes easier. And the basic is the language which uses the interpreter for a compilation process. Okay. There are two more important softwares which play an important role in a program execution, that is linker and loader. So first we see linker. So the role of linker is to link the object code of the program with pre-compiled code like such as predefined functions and libraries or library files. Okay, what happen whenever we write any program using C language, we use some predefined functions or some library files which are stored by the C compiler, and that we can include in our program. So we can include that by just using hash include statement. Okay, but the linking is done by the linker whenever the object code is created. So after creating the object code, that library files or the code of that pre-compiled functions is going to be linked with the current file or current program, and the whole object code is generated by the linker, and then it is given to the loader. Okay, so it creates a single executable file which is then given to the loader. Okay, now the second software is loader. Now for the program to run, that program must be resides in the main memory. Okay, so the loader is going to load that program, that executable program, in the main memory for execution purpose. So it reserves the space in the main memory to store that program for the execution, and it is happened at the execution time. So the role of the loader is to load the program for execution in a main memory space. Okay. Now we see errors. Errors are actually the integral part of any programming. There are two types of errors which are commonly occur during the programming. In that, the first type is the syntax errors. What is this syntax error is? Syntax errors are occur when the rules, or we can say the grammar of the language, are not properly followed. Then when that grammar or the rules are not properly followed, then at that time the syntax errors are occur. The compiler is going to be checked the source code for the syntax errors and informs the programmer. For example, if we forgot to put a semicolon at the end of any statement, then the compiler checks that and gives an error to the programmer, that is missing semicolon. Okay, and these errors we can easily remove by editing that at that point, correcting that, and again compiling it. Okay, now the second type of error are semantic errors. Now semantic errors are also called as logical errors because they are related with the logic of the program. And these errors are occur when we make a mistake within process, within logic of the program or in an algorithm. Okay. For example, if we perform the subtraction instead of addition in the program logic, means what? In program logic we actually requires to make the addition or add two numbers, but here we can subtract it. So that is a logical error. So, and it is also called as a semantic error. In such a case, a program will be executed, but we may not get the correct output or desired output. And to remove that semantic error, the programmer has to check the logic for each instruction in the program, and then can remove that error and then again compile the program. So this process is somewhat time consuming process, and this is called as debugging of the errors. Okay. Next we see testing. Testing is also the integral part of software development, and it is very important also. Before doing or before testing any software or any program, we need to be planned the process of testing. Then this testing is carried out for verifying the program whether it is run as expected and it gives the expected output for all the cases or not. For testing purpose, the set of test cases are created. Now, this test cases is nothing but a set of conditions or some variables under which the tester is going to determine whether the system or a piece of code is going to satisfy the requirement or not, or it works correctly or not. The software testers carry out this testing either manually, or there are so many special softwares are also available. Using that, the testing can be carried out. Any bugs that are detected or reported to the developer that makes the necessary code changes to correct the program. The next topic is good programming practices. So whenever we write a program, it is not only to write the code which is going to run and gives you some output. So it is about writing the good program and improving the quality of the program. Many computer programs are very large. So number of lines of code is there, which is developed by different peoples. A number of peoples are involved in that and remain in use for long time. They also need to be revised and updated from time to time. So we have to make the changes after some time because technologies are get changed, new techniques or new updations be required in the current process. So we have to update that code. Okay, so for that purpose, if a programmer follow the good programming practices while developing the program, the code become easier to understand and subsequent modifications can be done efficiently by any new programmer also. So for that, the good programming practices is very important. When we define it, we can define it as programming practices are a set of informal rules which helps to improve the quality of software. So it is a informal rules. It is a set of informal rules. But if you follow that, your program become, you can say, more interactive, easy to understand. You can easily find out the errors. Okay. Now look at some good programming practices. The first is documentation. It is very important aspect of coding. Documentation means we are going to provide or we are going to adding some additional information along with the code, which is used to or which makes it easier to understand the instructions. This may include the author information, the information of your program, uh, version number, date, time of the creation and modification, etc. And programmer must also include the comments within the program which describes us what is the purpose of this code or what is the purpose of this program. Now, the second practice is indentation. It is very important. Means it is nothing but a good programming style, which is convey the structure within a program. It actually helps in clarifying and separating the various programming constructs such as loops, decision-making statements. The reader can easily identify the block of code which is comes under the loop or decision making statement, so reader can easily identify it. The identification makes the code more readable. Okay, now the next is naming conventions. uh, Naming convention is also very important one, because using a good naming convention in any program is very helpful for the reader of that program to get the information about the different components which are included within a program. The names within which are used within a program, like for a module or for a different identifiers or variables, must be logical and they must be meaningful also. It must indicate the purpose of or purpose for which it being used there. This makes the code more readable. For example, if we wish to store the radius of the circle, the variable must be named as radius or radius underscore of underscore circle or r. Okay, which is a good naming convention. Or to store the addition of two numbers, we use the variable sum, or we can use C or addition, like this. The next convention is keep the code simple. The code may be modified by another program in the future as we need updation after some time or evolution after some time. So the complicated code written by one programmer may not be understood by the another programmer. Hence, it is very important to keep the code as simple as possible. The next practice is portability. The code of the program should not contain the hard code, that values which are referring to some element that may change in the future, such as rate, price, etc., or environmental parameters such as file path, file names, user names, host name, IP address. Use of this hard-coded value may not allow the program to run on the different machines or different environments. So these are the 5 good programming practices. If you follow these programming practices, your code or your program become easy to understand, and it is for you also or for any other reader also. Now we see one example with indentation. Here is one program in which we are see how the indentation is used at time of writing any program. So here, this is the first line of the program, which is a comment line because it is included into slash star and star slash. So this is a part of documentation. Here, because of this line, anyone who read this program is get what is the purpose of this program. So here, this program is to check whether the number is even or odd. Now, the next is we start with the main function, void main, and these curly braces indicate the beginning of this function. Okay. Now after this, we are giving the tab or spaces, 7 to 8 spaces, and then we start to write the instructions. So here we write the instructions like we declare the variable integer a, then we write the printf statement, enter the number, and we read it by using scanf statement percentage of d ampersand a. Now the next statement is if condition. Okay, so that is if a mod 2 is equal to 0. Now look at here, when the conditional statement comes, there is the code which is included within this conditional statement. So this block of code is again intended in an inner place. So the again after if the tab is given or the spaces are given and then we write printf number is even, means it indicates it comes under this if statement. So if a mod 2 is equal to 0, then you can print number is even. Then else again the tab or spaces and printf number is odd. Okay, and last we end the program. So this it is a closing curly braces which indicate end of the program. So they are in a same column. The begin and end are in the same column. It means that this code is included within this begin and end. So it is easy to identify it, easy to read and understand the program. Okay. So here your first chapter is completed. Thank you, students.